It's our pal Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report. Scott, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Good, Jay. How are you?
I am great, man. We talked a lot of baseball, talked a lot of hockey, and now we're ready to talk some football. And let's get right into it, man. I know the big news here a couple of weeks ago was the contract extensions for Todd Bowles and Jason Licht. And I wanted to get your opinion because I actually put out a Twitter poll that day, and there was over 300 comments, 300 votes.
Yeah.
And it was right around 80% of Buccaneers fans not happy with the extension for Todd Bowles. They either hated it or didn't like it. And I just, I know that Todd Bowles, to some people, the jury's still out on whether he's the guy to really lead this team to their third Super Bowl in franchise history. But I was a little surprised that people were not thrilled with the extension. What do you say about those results and also your initial reaction to the news?
I think there's two things to look at here, right? If you're a Buccaneer fan, it's okay. There has been some incremental improvement from 8 wins to 9 wins to 10 wins, trending in the right direction, right? When it comes to the year-by-year record of Todd Bowles as a head coach of this team. Granted, he was the defensive coordinator that helped the Bucs win a Super Bowl, so there's a little bit of former history there too on the staff of Bruce Arians. But and let's also put it out there too. I've covered John Gruden from day one to the very end, and he is the only coach outside of Bowles to win 3 division titles. It took him 7 years to do that. Bowles did it in the first 3 years. If he wins another one this year, he'll be the only coach in Bucs history to not just win 4, period, but 4 in his first 4 seasons. So there is something to be said about that. Where I think fans are unhappy is that playoff record, right? 1-3. And certainly losing that home playoff game last year, that was a step in the wrong direction, right? So if you're stepping in the right direction in the regular season, that's fine. But in the playoffs, when it kind of matters most, the 1-3 record is not ideal. So, to me, I can understand why some fans feel like this is kind of like an incomplete moment for Todd Bowles. Right. But I think one thing I learned at the NFL annual meeting, and my last name is Reynolds, is not Glazer. I don't own the team, but they do, and they're very, very much in support of Todd Bowles, all in support of Todd Bowles, and it's their team, and I think they've learned a couple lessons, Jay. They kind of grew a little disenfranchised with the offense under Tony Dungy, and they fired the guy who brought this team out of the dark ages and turned the team around, that made the Buccaneers again rather than the Yuccaneers, right? And took them to respectability. And how did they do that? By this miracle trade for John Gruden. Hallelujah, Hail Mary. They won the Super Bowl the next year. Easy, right? Okay. Well, they tried it again when they kind of grew disenchanted with John Gruden. Remember his last year, they were 9-3, wound up 9-7, didn't make the playoffs in 2008. And Gruden, who won a Super Bowl, 3 division titles, more wins than anybody, was fired like Dungy after a 9-7 season. They thought lightning could strike twice. They hired Mike Tomlin's clone and Raheem Morris. It didn't work out. Right. They went 3-13 that year. And then after taking this team out of a decade of darkness, when they took over the franchise in 95, well, they presided over a decade of darkness. And, and this was of their doing, to go from Raheem to Greg Schiano to Lovie Smith to Dirk Cutter, thankfully to Bruce Arians. And so I think that what they've learned, Jay, is they've learned to be patient.
Right.
And that comes with age. Wisdom comes with age. And I think, they're 30 years into this, just like I am. We both came in 1995, the Glazers owning the team, me covering the Bucs for Pewter Report. And I think that's part of the reason why they're looking around the landscape, right, around the NFL, and they're saying, all right, the teams that are always giving themselves the opportunity, Baltimore, Philly, Pittsburgh, they have continuity. They're not making all these changes, and they like what Jason Licht and Todd Bowles have built. They work very, very well together. And so I think what they're looking at this, the reason why they announced the contract extension for Bowles as well as Jason Licht is, hey, we don't want any talk about this guy being on the hot seat. He is on an ice cold seat entering this season. We like this team where it's at. We all, including Todd Bowles, want to get to the next level. NFC Championship game, preferably the Super Bowl after that.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to rock the boat. And I think it would take a season where the bottom falls out for Todd Bowles to really not have job security. And two other things real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, quickly, they had a chance to switch out Todd Bowles for Liam Cohen, the shiny new toy on offense. They had that chance, and they didn't do it. They had a chance to go for the hotshot young offensive coordinator, because remember, the Bucs offense wore the superhero cape all last year, not the defense.
Right.
From week 1, 37 points on Washington on, it was an offensive-driven team. And they had some excuses. They could have made the switch if they wanted to, but they chose Todd Bowles because he's a leader of men, and they value that, and they feel like this is going in the right direction. And number two, Todd Bowles helped them win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And and despite all the injuries in the secondary last year, despite the defense not performing well, and not having Servassier Dennis out there, and Jamel Dean being hurt every other week or whatever, when the offense generated a lead, and we saw this in New Orleans in the second half, we saw this at New York against the Giants in the second half, we even saw this out in LA against the Chargers, a playoff team, in the second half. You give Todd Bowles a lead, and even with a wounded defense, he can still make things happen, shut teams out, and get in his bag. And so I think what they're thinking is all right, let's give Todd a better roster, more playmakers on defense, a little knock on wood, return to health. And it's not like Todd can't coach. And then I think the other thing is the timing of this happened after an offseason in which Todd Bowles did everything right. Changed his coaching staff up, hired a game management coach, wanted ball hawks. He and Jason Light went out and got ball hawks in free agency, in the draft. And I don't know what else Todd Bowles could have done this offseason when games aren't being played to make this team better. I think he checked all the boxes. So I think the Blazers looked at the big picture and said, this is heading in the right direction. Let's keep this thing together, and let's remove all media narrative. Let's get Pro Football Talk off the back, Todd Bowles, and give this guy a little bit of grace and room to move and breathe and operate by heading into a season with no question marks around it.
Yeah, I'm with you wholeheartedly, man. And that Chargers game specifically, I mean, they took Justin Herbert out of that game. They were just like, this isn't working. Like they had a couple of drives left too, and they were down by a couple of scores. They're like, we don't want to continue to do this, getting bludgeoned over the head. Right. When you look at this defense, right, and the pass rush, and now you see a name like TJ Watt come out there and 31 years young, people are like, oh yeah, you should trade this, you should trade that. Yeah. Do you see the Bucs making any type of move, whether it's on the offense or defensive side of the ball, as far as signing a veteran free agent, even if it's on a 1-year deal, or trading for somebody? Or do you think this roster is going to be as close as it's going to look for week 1?
I think it's pretty close to how it's going to be in week 1. I really do. They like this team. I remember, I think I asked the question. I asked Todd Bowles, what is like your strongest position on offense and defense? And of course, on offense, he said, we really like our wide receiver room now, running backs, offensive line. And then on defense, it was a bit of a head scratcher when he said, inside linebackers are our deepest position. I was like, inside linebacker? Wait a minute. You got old man Levante at age 35 out there. And you got Servassier Dennis, who, has shown glimpses of promise, but has been oft injured. And then you got a couple of aging, guys behind him, and Anthony Walker Jr. and Deion Jones. But then I watched the other OTA, and then I watched the 3-day mandatory minicamp, and you kind of see Deion Jones still running around making plays. Anthony Walker is an upgrade over KJ Britt and JJ Russell. He just is, athletically, communication-wise, experience-wise. He's a big physical dude. He and Servassier Dennis looked exceptionally well together out there. Levante was just chilling because he's 35.
Yeah, you don't need to be out there at that time.
You don't need to be out there. Exactly, yeah. So the more I watch this, I'm buying into it, and I'm like thinking, all right, well, yeah. Anthony Walker reminds me a lot of Kevin Minter, who at the end of his career played for a couple games in 2019 and 2020 for Devin White when he was injured. Remember, he started the game when against Washington in the playoffs, the wild card game in 2020 when Devin was out with COVID, and held down the fort and wasn't a weak link. And so to me, I think they're deeper at inside linebacker, which was a problem area last year. They're deeper at cornerback with the draft and re-signing Bryce Hall and adding Kendall Vildor. I don't see how Tyreek Funderburk makes the team. Josh Hayes makes it, but he's cornerback 6 as a gunner. Think Ryan Smith, like special teams ace only. Not cornerback 3, cornerback 6, which is where he kind of belongs. Not throwing shade, just telling the truth.
No, yeah.
I like the outside linebacker room with Hassan Reddick. It's just the defensive tackle room. I mean, you have Logan Hall in a contract year. Yes, please. Playing his best game of his career, probably against Washington. Elijah Cansey and Vita Vea. I mean, I like this roster, and I think
a lot to like.
There really is. And sometimes, you need the splash, guy to come on board, and they think that's Hassan Reddick, and it very well could be. But I go back to like what John Gruden did back in 2002. He turned a lot of the C players from that last year at Tony Dungy in 2001 into B players. And because remember, the team that won the Super Bowl had all the stars that went into Philly in 2000 and 2001 and got hammered by the Eagles. Mike Allstott was on that team. Keyshawn Johnson, Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, John Lynch, Rondé Barber. All those A-list Hall of Fame, Ring of Honor players were on that team that got drubbed in Philly.
Right.
So it's not just your A players. It's football's a game of mismatches. Bill Belichick attacked weaknesses better than anybody, right? And the more B players you have and the fewer C players or D players you have, the better, because then you're a stronger team. You can have all the Pro Bowlers and the A-list players. You're not going to have 11 of them on offense or 11 of them on defense. There's going to be some weak links. But if you can upgrade your roster and maybe if Jamel Dean gets replaced by Benjamin Morrison, that's probably a better upgrade than Josh Hayes in a key game.
Yeah, I'm interested because I think it's important for everybody to realize that, like, going into week 1, this team, the depth and not trying to put too much on these rookies so early. So if Benjamin Morrison and Parrish and all these guys aren't starting week 1, it's fine. It's fine. Like, let them kind of grow into the season. I want to ask you, this is a great question to ask you because I know a lot of people can't answer it. What is, and I don't know if it was Matt or Adam that joined us here on the program. Again, check out all of our friends, pewterreport.com. When you're looking at special teams, because with these wide receivers now, we know who the first 4 guys are with Evans, Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, and Jalen McMillan. But that back half, or the back, 2, 3, maybe, like, what is that looking like? Is Sterling Shepard going to be in the mix? And then how does that affect your special teams? Because now you start looking at your secondary, you're looking at your linebackers, and you're wondering, okay, you're probably not going to get any of it. Like, let's say Shepard's 5 and they only keep 5, right? Sterling's not playing on special teams like that, right? So how do you kind of look and see how many wide receivers are going to pick, and then in hand, how's that's going to affect special teams?
I don't know that Sterling Shepard makes the team this year. I think it's just like last year. He makes the practice squad, and he's kind of at that age where I think he's 32. He's older than Mike Evans, where he's just like, okay, like I want to hang around and have fun for another year, right?
Here if you need me.
Yeah, exactly, right. I want to play with Baker and chop it up with Mike and Chris, and I just want to be part of the team. I'm not ready to be full-time dad yet. There's still plenty of years. My kids are young, but this is a young man's game, and I'm not getting any younger, right? So I think you can kind of talk Sterling Shepard into, hey, we like you. We saw how much we needed you last year. Gosh, let's, heaven forbid it has to happen again. But if it does, we can count on you. You know that. And, why not hang around and see if you can win a ring with us? Like, this isn't a bad gig. Tampa's pretty nice. So I think he probably is a practice squad player again.
Right.
The guys to keep an eye on for wide receivers 5 and 6. I think Tez Johnson makes the team. He's probably the punt return guy, probably beats out Trey Palmer, who had all of last year to really show what he could do, and he didn't. And I think Cam Johnson's the other player, number 19.
They love him, don't they?
They do, and he just got snake bit with some injuries, but he has a lot of ability. He's kind of a sleeper to watch in training camp. Tez Johnson, I went back and watched just because the 50th year of the franchise. Tez Johnson reminds me a lot of Carl the Truth Williams.
Oh, wow.
Just kind of a slippery punt return guy, right? Probably faster than Truth was. Truth is probably a 4.5, 4.6 guy. I know Tez Johnson timed 4.51 at the combine. I think he's probably a tick faster when he's getting chased, with pads on, the adrenaline's going. Probably a 4.4 guy. So to me, I think he probably wins that return job. We've seen Emeka Egbuka back there returning kicks because you're going to have to find somebody alongside of Sean Tucker. I think Sean Tucker is kick return 1. He did a great job there, and he's your number 3 running back, so you can afford to have him in that spot. And if Jalen McMillan ends up still being number 3 and Emeka Egbuka is number 4, then give me that first-round talent on the field with the ball in his hands, because he's an electric player too. So, I do think special teams will be better from the return aspect. The kick return unit was pretty good last year. You had Bucky out there, and I mean, he actually had a better average than Sean Tucker by about a yard or two. Then all of a sudden, he emerges as that running back 1 down the stretch, and then he hurts his hip against Carolina on a kick return. So they're like, oh, shoot, let's get him off that squad.
Right.
We need you returning, or I should say taking handoffs from Baker Mayfield rather than returning kicks. So, I do think the special teams from a return aspect has the chance to be better. I think Tez Johnson's a big part of that.
I think sometimes we talk so much about the minutia, talk so much about a lot of things. We're just getting into special teams there. Let's go right back to the top then in Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
What do you expect from Baker Mayfield in 2025? Because I feel like this is uncharted territory for him, because what was the talk going into last year? Well, we've yet to see 2 good seasons back-to-back with Baker Mayfield, right? And now we've gotten 2 consistent years. There's no questions from anybody in the National Football League that he is a starter in this league. And now it's not if he's a starter, it's where he ranks. Is he a top 7 quarterback? Is he a top 15 quarterback? But as far as, I don't know if growth is the right word, but what does he have to do this year? Instead of just the plain answer of like he's just got to maintain, but is there something that he has to improve on? Is when you look at Baker and say, hey, maybe got to make a little tweak here, a little tweak there, because what I'm also thinking of, Scott, is like if this team ends up losing a game and he throws a couple of picks, like that's how their season ends. I wonder if those questions start coming out with Baker, because as much as everybody loves him, I think they love him. They love the guy, right? But I also think that there's a little bit of this out there, whether it's locally or nationally, where if the Buccaneers lose and let's say he throws 3 picks in that last game, people are going to be like, look, see, that's the Baker. I don't know if he's convinced everybody yet. So if he has to improve on a certain thing, what do you think it would be?
I mean, the obvious answer is that the turnovers have to come down, right? That's the thing. You went back and looked last year. He had 4 interceptions. 2 were actually behind the line of scrimmage. I think 1 was like an intercepted screen pass against the Raiders. That comes to mind. The other one I think might have been a batted ball at the line of scrimmage, and then there were 2 more interceptions between 0 and 10 yards. Right, so 4 out of his 15 interceptions happened right around the line of scrimmage, and he's 6 foot tall. He's not going to grow. Right, he is what he is at this point in time. He's not going to be 6'5", where he can, look over the entire offensive line. So you kind of have to deal with that. But then he also had some fluky interceptions too. Think back at the Saints game back in Week 5, right, where he had like 2 or 3 interceptions in the first half. Some of those were like a little fluky. So, and those kind of balance out with the dropped interceptions too. He had some of those. Let's just call Baker a 15 interception guy last year, because that's what he was. If he can get that down to around 12. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but it is. If you can get it around 10 or 12 for the volume of passes he's going to throw, for the amount of touchdowns he's going to generate, I think if you go into the season, and I don't care what team you are, and you say, your quarterback at the end of the year, and you're not going to know the numbers, is going to have a 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. Do you take it? Hell yeah, you take it.
Yeah, no doubt.
You probably take a 3-to-1 ratio, right? And because that's 45 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, right? That's 3-to-1. So, I think that's the thing. If he can be a little bit more careful with the ball. But I think the other challenge for Baker this year is going to be, can he be a more accurate downfield thrower?
Right.
Because this offense is going to have, Baker admitted it, Josh Grizzard admitted it, it's going to have a more vertical element. They want some more manufactured big plays rather than Mike Evans taking a 7-yard slant and breaking a tackle and taking it 17 yards, right? Because if he doesn't break that tackle, then it's a 7-yard gain, right? You don't get the first down. But if he breaks it, then you get the first down. Well, if you throw the ball 12 yards and your receiver catches it, that's a first down automatically without the receiver having to do a damn thing. So I think they want some more manufactured big plays in the passing game. Not necessarily the Bruce Arians, Dirk Cutter, vertical, we're going to check it 40 yards down the field to Mike, kind of thing. That it's not going to be Jameis Winston ball, because I don't care what quarterback you are. You could be Tom Brady, Joe Montana. The further you throw the ball down the field, the lower completion percentage you're going to have as a result. So that's why Baker Mayfield completed 71% of his passes last year, because a lot of them were short passes out of his hands. Ram-style offense, get the ball in the receiver's hands or the running back's hands or the tight end's hands, let them get yards after catch. I think Josh Grizzard wants them to be a little bit more explosive and more, instead of having X amount of short passes, take some of those short passes, make them intermediate. Instead of only having a few deep balls, take a few of those intermediate passes and maybe double up the amount of deep balls from like 2 or 3 per game to 5 or 6. The challenge for Baker is, can you be accurate throwing the ball plus 20 yards down the field? His accuracy fell from 65% under 20 yards, or I should say not just under 20 yards, but from 10 to 19 yards, 65%. It's really good. To 38% beyond 20. And if he can get that to 45%, that's a more reasonably welcome number. 45, 50% on anything past 20 yards would be great. That's a huge increase. Because again, the further you throw the ball, even just one-on-one, forget double coverage, even one-on-one, it's not just throwing the ball to where it's supposed to be. It's, can the receiver adjust to the ball, right? And then be open enough to try to make the catch without the pass getting deflected. It's much easier to defend a go ball down the field one-on-one than it is a quick slant, because sometimes the cushion that a cornerback gives you makes the quick slant almost a gimme, right? Because he just can't get there fast enough. So that's going to be the challenge for Baker, is with the more vertical-based offense this year. And it's not going to be, again, Bruce Arians or Dirk Cutter. Just a couple more passes, intermediate rather than short, and a couple more deep rather than an intermediate. And can he get the necessary downfield chemistry? We saw Dave Canales try to do it with Trey Palmer, and those guys just couldn't connect. And so we'll see. Baker's got a strong arm. It's just the touch. And believe it or not, the funny thing is, Kyle Trask in the OTAs, in the mini camps, he was the guy that was connecting with Tez Johnson 30, 40, 50 yards down the field. I mean, on the money throws. And Baker was the guy that just needed a little bit more, trajectory or a little bit more touch or whatever on those passes. So I think that's going to be what we're going to find out in training camp is who is Baker aligning with from a chemistry standpoint down the field, and then how often are they connected?
Yeah, remember Jameis and Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? Jameis had this great arm, but Ryan Fitzpatrick was the guy that could just drop it in the bucket to Deshaun Jackson. All right, before I let you go, I just wanted to ask you, are the Falcons a real threat in the South here? And I know this is divisional matchups. They won both games, but I just, and they've made some moves. Michael Penix, get first year that he's going to be the guy from the beginning. Like, are the Falcons a real threat to the Buccaneers?
It's a great question, Jay. And I think a lot of it, you mentioned Michael Penix, it really hinges on him. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, right? Because he played in 3 or 4 games last year at the end of the season. And it's a double-edged sword. It's enough to where if you're Michael Penix, you have enough of your own film in a game situation, enough experience to kind of draw from a little bit, right? To get excited and to make some changes and already got my feet wet, right? But conversely, if you're Todd Bowles, well, you've given me enough film where I kind of know your tendencies a little bit, right? I saw you get sacked X amount of times. I saw you drop back X amount of times. I saw you check out of this play to this play X amount of times. Kind of got a little bit of a bead on you a little bit. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, if I'm Todd Bowles, I'm going to see you, Michael Penix, in week 1, right, too.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that. I think the Falcons go as far as Penix takes them this year. They do have some weapons. Their offensive line is good, but not great. Their defense has been retooled. I'm not sold on their edge rushers at all.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be banking on those edge rushers to be real terrors, and that's really, really hard as a rookie to come in and just light the world on fire. And neither one of those guys, I think, are really pro ready. Javon Walker is the better athlete, and he might be the more ready guy in terms of his body and athleticism to play. But then you look at the sack numbers; he was more of an off-ball backer than he was a pass rusher at Georgia.
Right.
So he doesn't have that experience to draw from. Whereas James Pierce he's got the experience. He's a more polished pass rusher, but he's also very light. Mm-hmm. And he probably going to get pushed around. He's probably not the guy you want out there on rundowns. You're probably going to want to run at him. His body, I don't think, is NFL ready yet. I think he's a designated pass rusher type. So, and that was a problem for the Falcons last year, was the pass rush. They couldn't get to the quarterback as often as they wanted to, similar to Tampa Bay. And so we'll see. I will say this, though. With the Falcons sweeping the Buccaneers, and I know it was Kirk Cousins because Kirk was Superman against the Buccaneers and Clark Kent against everybody else.
Right.
But the Falcons as a whole, they're not afraid of Tampa Bay, right? The Bucs aren't the bully. Right. Even though they won the banner, it doesn't matter to them. Like they got swept. And the Falcons had that kind of special sauce at the end. They had the overtime winner. They came back, right, tied the game, then won it in overtime. So they feel like a little magical against the Buccaneers. And it's not like the Bucs who, swept the Saints, swept the Panthers, and they've done that 2 out of the last 3 years under Bowles. I mean, the Saints and Panthers have not fared well against the Todd Bowles team. The Falcons have. And so I think that kind of matters in week 1 where everyone's kind of feeling pretty good about their chances. Everyone's 0-0. Mm-hmm. So, the Falcons are going to assume that they're going to win in week 1, as they should. And I think for Tampa Bay, it's a great week for revenge to kick the season off. So should they be worried about the Falcons? Yeah, I think so. I don't think the Falcons are going to win the division. Mm-hmm. But if Tampa Bay is not careful, it could be a situation last year where they end up winning the division, yet struggling against Atlanta because of some matchups.
You're very nice calling Kirk Cousins Clark Kent, because he was like an intern in the mailroom at the Daily Planet against everybody not named the Buccaneers last year. Speaking of interns, I know you guys are looking for interns for Pewter Report. Let everybody know what that entails.
Yeah, email me at sr@pewterreport.com. We've actually hired a couple of our interns. Adam Slavan was our most recent intern we've hired. He's now a full-time, full-fledged Pewter reporter. Matt Matera was also an intern. We got both of those guys from University of Tampa. Go Sparty. So, if you're, it's open to any ages, but I mean, it's really worked out well for college kids, especially getting some college credit for internships. We're looking for writers. We're looking for people with video editing, for graphic design. If you want an opportunity to better your resume and maybe end up being a Pewter reporter one day and getting the chance to cover the Tampa Bay Buccaneers training camp and regular season, we're looking for interns. So it's worked out. We've kind of developed a good roster from our internship program. So it's a good opportunity.
What is it again? SR
SR@pewterreport.com, my email address. Yep.
Can't beat it.
It's
SR at
easy to remember.
pewterreport.com. And yeah, training camp's going to be here before you know it. And
I know.
make sure you guys are always the Fab, everything, the mailbag, the Fab, everything. There's just so many crazy things going on pewterreport.com. I get mad at myself when I don't keep up with it. And I miss like 2 or 3 articles because I need 10, 15 minutes to read them all. Pewterreport.com. Go check them out on all social media platforms. Scott, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, man. Have a good 4th of July. We'll talk soon.
Yep, you got it. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Good stuff.